Welcome to the County Conversations podcast, brought to you by the Florida Association of Counties Institute for County Government with support from the University of Florida's IFAS. In this podcast, we dive deep into the diverse and dynamic world of Florida's counties with engaging interviews and thought-provoking conversations surrounding the challenges as well as successes of Florida's counties. Each episode brings you first-hand perspectives from county commissioners, government officials, community leaders, and subject matter experts who are shaping the future of our state. We explore a wide range of topics from economic development and public safety to environmental conservation and emerging technologies. Our aim here is to provide a platform for knowledge sharing, collaboration, and inspiration for county officials and residents alike. Whether you're a county commissioner, government professional, or simply interested in understanding the local government landscape, we hope this podcast provides valuable insights and practical takeaways on all things counties.
All right. I've got 11 a.m. here in Tallahassee. Again, Jeff Scala with THAC. I'm joined, of course, with Eryn Hurley from NACo, our legislative director for NACo. I'm filling in here for Eric Poole, but today we have our monthly federal update. Erin's going to provide some updates from Capitol Hill on the continuing resolution and some other topics going on up in D.C. So I will kick it over to Eryn for our federal update.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Here at NACo, we're all sending our thoughts and prayers with those that have been affected by the hurricanes over the last couple of weeks. So I wanted to say that first and foremost, we're all thinking of you. As Jeff mentioned, I am going to just talk to you all about some of the key items that NACo is tracking right now and into the lame duck session after the November elections. So as you can see here, we have appropriations, we have an update on the disaster relief fund, as well as some other disaster related legislation, heavy duty trucks, and then also artificial intelligence and again, our lame duck priorities. So first up is where we are with the federal government funding. So I'm sure you all know, of course, that Congress, before they left for recess to get on the trail for campaigning ahead of the elections, they passed a short-term funding resolution. So that funds the federal government at its current levels until December 20th of 2024. So you'll see here there are a couple of provisions I wanted to point out. So first and foremost, it does free up $20 million for FEMA's disaster relief fund. So what that means is that now FEMA would be able to use their funding beyond the immediate needs assistance, which was what was happening prior to the continuing resolution, or the CR. It also extends the federal food stamps program as well as the federal welfare program too. So looking ahead after the election, so Congress, they do come back a week after the election on November 12th. Now that they are operating under a continuing resolution, they really have two options, which, as you can see on the screen. The first is to pass a final funding package through an omnibus package before the current continuing resolution expires. So that's an omnibus package is kind of like a mixture of different funding, right? So that's the first option there. The second one is to enact another continuing resolution or a short-term funding solution that would further extend the current levels of funding that we're currently operating under into the new year and the next Congress. Right now, it's looking like probably it's going to be option 2, just given the fact that it'll be a new Congress. Obviously, things are going to get shaken up because of the November elections. So realistically, we could see it being pushed into the new year, but that's all to say, even if that does happen, we will continue funding at current levels. So no issues really there. I will say, even if Congress does end up doing that, NACo continues to really hone in on the fact that counties need that long-term funding certainty, especially when we are setting our budgets, right? I don't need to tell you that counties operate under different budget cycles. I think that's a common misconception at the federal level. So NACo always is reminding and educating lawmakers about those different cycles and the certainty that we need. We also, apologies for this, I should have put a QR code on this slide, but I'll throw the link into the chat in a bit. NACo, we developed a new appropriations tracker online, which is a really fantastic tool that you can use to actually see which appropriation bills are at what stages. So, for example, you can see the financial services and general government appropriations bill. It made out a certain way through the House committee, but it hasn't been introduced in the Senate. So you can actually track those along the way. And then each one of those sections, NACo has created template letters for county leaders to actually for you to send to your members of Congress to push for the main county priorities that NACo also continues to push throughout the right now and into the lame duck session too. So that's where we are on appropriations. Next up is the disaster relief package that Congress has been going back and forth on. I know, of course, this is very, very significant to you all and folks on the call, given what has happened over the last month. So right now, you probably have heard that there have been negotiations on whether Congress should come back early ahead of the election. We are speaking to both the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee staff on the House side, and then also the Homeland Security Committee as well too. So what we've heard is that it doesn't necessarily seem like lawmakers will return early to DC to pass the disaster aid package at this point. But I will say, in those meetings that we've been doing with committee staff, it looks like what's going to happen is that in lieu of a full disaster package, Congress will increase funding for certain federal disaster programs. So again, they are going to plus up the Disaster Relief Fund, CDBG-DR, and then small business assistance disaster loans as well too. So again, there will be additional funding in those three federal programs if there is no package that is actually passed. I will say though, again, in the background, NACo continues to meet with lawmakers as well as committee staff in hopes that we are able to pass it, a larger package, even if it's after the election as well too. But regardless, there is additional federal assistance coming. Another item I did want to mention, there has been a lot of disaster related legislation that has been introduced or passed out of a congressional committee or passed out of chamber over the last, I would say, 3 months. One of these that we really we could see it potentially becoming law, is the Disaster Assistance Simplification Act. So where we're at right now is that it has passed the Senate. So it's passed the full Senate and it's still pending in the House. What it would do is that there would be a universal disaster application across FEMA, Department of Housing and Urban Development, and Small Business Administration too. So obviously, I don't need to tell you all that this would really streamline the process and make it a lot easier for counties to receive federal assistance. So this one is looking like the most likely bill to potentially pass Congress, and NACo is pushing really, really hard to get this across the finish line as well too. But beyond this bill, there's also the Disaster Survivors Act that has been introduced in the Senate. That one is a little bit of a larger bill. So it seems less likely that it actually would be, passed by both chambers. But the reason why this bill on the screen has a chance is because it's much more narrowly focused. And then in the House side, there were 3 different disaster related bills that made it out of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee too. So we continue to work with the full House to try to get those up for a floor vote too. Another item that has come up a lot recently are some concerns and negotiations about the weight of heavy duty trucks. So right now, there are a number of proposals in Congress that would actually increase the size and weight of heavy trucks, and their current threshold, their weight threshold is 80,000 pounds. So that's where we are right now, right? Again, you all know heavy duty trucks already cause a lot of substantial damage to local roads and bridges. You all are the ones that own those roads and bridges and are responsible for their maintenance. And ultimately, what some data has suggested that these upgrades that have been proposed by these bills would actually cost $80 billion. So across the nation, right? So those additional costs for counties that do own roads and bridges, counties would have to bear those costs, right? So ultimately, what would that do, right? Obviously, that would impact your budgets, but then also it would down the line require you to raise taxes for your local taxpayers, and then also there's a whole set of safety hazards as well too. So even though it may seem like, this could potentially be on the back burner, this is a really, really significant issue that NACo has been at the forefront in our fight against raising the threshold. There have been like significant bills that have been introduced that would allow, that would give the governor ultimate like responsibility to determine the weight that heavy duty trucks could actually become without any sort of local input on what that weight could be. Again, even though oftentimes it's the counties that are responsible for maintaining the roads and bridges. So you'll see this QR code on this screen right here. That will actually take you to the web page that will outline all of the different bills that have been introduced, as well as all of the letters that NACo has sent, either standalone or as part of a larger coalition group, to members of Congress with our significant concerns about the impact this will have. And then I also did want to mention too, some of our work on artificial intelligence. You all may have seen over the last year, a little over a year, that NACo, we did establish our AI Exploratory Committee back in 2023. The intent behind that was that, AI is not going away, right? But we need to make sure as local governments get more involved in AI, and the implementation of AI into, a broad range of systems and processes, we want to make sure that we're getting the most out of it, but then we also recognize the challenges too, right? So when NACo set out to create this committee, we established 4 working groups within the larger exploratory committee. So it's around policies, so specifically how counties could actually implement policies around AI to make sure that you have a handle on it, right? Ethics, I think that kind of goes without saying. There's a lot of issues with AI as it pertains to ethics right now, whether it's the deep fakes and so on. So thinking about ethics, the applications. So how could you actually implement AI into your county processes to make life easier? And then also workforce. AI has bubbled up into the workforce area a lot now. So how can you really harness like the opportunities within AI into different areas within the county, whether it's like housing, for example. We also provide general guidance, and then again, the benefits, challenges, and opportunities. We have continued, just because we came out with this AI report, which if you scan the QR code, it'll take you right to there. Just because we came out with the report doesn't mean that this conversation is over. NACo staff has actually been traveling even more now that the report is released. That really outlines the toolkit itself that we put together, but also negotiations around artificial intelligence more generally within Congress right now. We know during the lame duck session, so again, after the election, there is a group of bipartisan senators that are taking a look at different AI legislation, even thinking about passing an AI legislative package that would address the primary concerns. And again, how to harness the potential with AI without putting anyone at risk as well too. So a lot is continuing to go on in this space, especially here in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill as well too. So don't potentially see that going anywhere. And then finally, the last item that I did want to mention is some of the lame duck priorities that we've been tracking. Or that we will be tracking. So the way that NACo actually sets what our lame duck priorities look like is based upon pretty much programs, packages that have not been reauthorized, and how we can work to reauthorize that legislation, and also different opportunities that we see like arise that can be attached to larger legislative packages that we know need to be acted upon, pretty much in those November and December months. So first is mental health legislation. I know that on this call, I've talked about it before. The Medicaid inmate exclusion policy, that is when an individual is booked into jail, they're not convicted of a crime, they lose all of their federal health benefits. So NACo's been working very, very hard as part of our mental health commission charge to reform that really harmful MIAP policy. So as part of that effort, we are trying to insert reforms to MIAP into a larger behavioral and mental health package, which is called the Support Act. The Support Act actually expired this time last year. So some of the programs, so the Support Act, what it was the biggest overdose prevention package of its time when it was first passed in 2018. So really, really significant piece of legislation. When it expired last year in September, luckily, a lot of the programs that were operating on it continue to have funding. I will say there is less funding in some programs, so there is a need to just generally reauthorize it. But NACo is trying to make this a vehicle to insert the MIAP reforms as well as reforms to the Institutions on Mental Disease, or the IMD exclusionary policies as well, which you all are likely familiar with, that caps the number of beds that can be in a mental or behavioral health facility too. So we're really trying to push that package forward and include those two key priorities on our end. The second lame duck priority that we have, and we're already really up and running, I was just on Capitol Hill yesterday pushing this, is the reauthorization for the Economic Development Administration, or EDA. So EDA, EDA is responsible for our pretty much a giant slew of programs that are beneficial to counties. Think like workforce development, economic development, like technical assistance training, and so on. So EDA, the funding for EDA actually has not been fully reauthorized since 2004. So it's been a major priority for counties. We have policy on it. Most recently, because Senator Carper is actually retiring this Congress, so that's one of his main priorities. There was a push to get EDA reauthorization included into the National Defense Act, the NDAA. So the Senate was able to include an amendment to that NDAA larger package. Again, that's like National Defense Package. They were able to get an amendment included that would reauthorize EDA. So because the Senate was able to get an amendment in there, what that means is that the House and Senate have to come together. There are specific committees within the House and Senate that come together and have to agree upon it's called a manager's amendment, that amendment in order before it goes to the full House and Senate for a vote. So right now, NACo is talking to both mostly the House Transportation and Infrastructure, so House T&I committees, making sure that both the Republican and Democrats are in support of that amendment as well too. Specifically looking at the House because the Senate had already adopted that manager's amendment there. I do want to say, if you scan that QR code, that will take you to one of our blogs, our landing page on the most recent developments around EDA reauthorization. So you can take a look of exactly kind of the process and where we are at. And then it also includes a kind of a call out box to a template letter that you're also able to send your members of Congress. Specifically, again, we're looking for House members to be supportive of this bill. So please feel free to use that, but we're really looking forward to continuing to work with Congress in hopes of reauthorizing EDA. And then this isn't necessarily the last item. We have a lot of other priorities, but don't want to bore you all with all of that information or bog you down. The next one is reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And I know that we've talked about this, the WIOA on this call beforehand. So right now what's happening is that the House and Senate are still in negotiations, which has been happening, I feel like, for the past 6 to 8 months right now. There are some hangups on specific provisions. Some of those include like the training mandate in the House bill. There's a redesignation process and weakening of local boards. So of course that impacts counties too. There is also an increase in the governor's set aside to 25%, which that rate is currently at 15% as well too. So I think one of the things that we have to look at is if Congress is unable to get this done by the end of the year, there are really significant opportunities in the new Congress, because ultimately NACo did have some concerns in this larger WIOA package that we've been working with lawmakers on as well too. But those are the top items I wanted to mention to you, and then I will just quickly mention a few other key priorities that we're working on. I probably should have included the Affordable Connectivity Program, the ACP. That was the program that was authorized under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that provides reduced internet to low-income households. It expired back in May of 2023. Because it expired, there were actually 23 million households that were benefiting from the Affordable Connectivity Program upon its expiration, right? So and the only way for households to actually continue on that reduced rate of internet is if the provider in their region agreed to say, hey, okay, we'll continue providing this reduced rate. The reality is a significant amount of providers did not do that. So many of those households that were receiving internet and had internet access no longer do. And that impacts work, school, you name it, telemedicine, everything, right? So because that program expired, there have been a number of bipartisan proposals, both in the US House and US Senate, that would provide funding for the ACP during the annual appropriations process. Some bills have been thrown out there that would fund the ACP at $8 billion, right? Under the bipartisan infrastructure law, it was $12 billion. There are some, so it's a reduction. But under that too, what would happen is that with the reduction in federal funding, there would also be certain eligibility requirement updates to the program. Other proposals bring it down to 7 billion and so on. So what NACo's been doing is we have been continuing to push both House and Senate leaders. It's a bipartisan effort to try to get this program funded through the annual appropriations process, considering the fact we saw the immense benefit that the ACP provided over a number of years. So we do continue working on that too. I will say also, and I can also try to include this in the chat, but I will say also, we as a NACo, we have an affordable connectivity program, an ACP toolkit landing page. So if you just type into Google, ACP toolkit NACo, it'll pop up right there. And you'll see that we have template letters to Congress that you can use, so you can send to your members of Congress that you support funding for the ACP. We also have kind of a call out box where you're able to tell your county story and why the ACP was so beneficial to your community and to your constituents as well too. So I highly recommend that you all check that out too. Given the fact that it's just such a significant program for us. And then just a couple of other lame duck priorities that we're going to be tracking is the Payment in Lieu of Taxes program, PILT, and the Secure Rural Schools program, which is SRS for short. Given that funding for the Secure Rural Schools program, which is more focused on like timber counties and replacing funding from timber harvest, that has expired. And then of course, Farm Bill as well too, as we all know, has been expired for quite some time. So we're really hoping to get some traction and to advocate during the lame duck session, but also at this point, the Farm Bill will move into 2025. So we'll continue to push there too. So Jeff, that's all I have for today. More than happy to take any questions, but as always, really appreciate you all for inviting me to be on.
And thank you, Eryn. That's certainly a comprehensive update. Sounds like the lame duck session may have their hands full. I know everyone is across the country is probably captivated by waiting for November 5th. But after that, I guess for some of the disaster relief legislation, is that kind of like, I mean, the timeline that we're looking at, like post election for some of these bills to get moving again?
Yes, yeah. So we're definitely looking at post election. Once Congress is back November 12th, they're definitely going to hit the ground running and try to get, each, both sides, both chambers, they all have a specific agenda that they're trying to achieve. So we'll definitely probably see a lot of action within those 2 months. I will give you also an update too. We are talking to some more in terms of like the disaster related items and when that surplus we can see in DRF and the CDBG-DR and SBA loans. We have another call later today with some more committee staff, so Jeff, we can pass along a more kind of concrete timeline when we can see those surpluses in federal funds too.
That would be great. And just another reminder, if anybody on the call, if you have questions, please put that down in the Q&A. We can pause here for a minute and make sure that you can type those in and ask Eryn while she's on the call. And I know we had gotten had some advocacy and outreach. I think it was more towards the summer on that big truck issue. Is it stalled, or is it that one still, I guess, chugging along too?
Yeah, so that issue, I mean, right now, again, since Congress has so many other kind of focuses right now, it hasn't been passed out of any sort of chamber yet. We were just alarmed by the amount of proposals that have been coming down. I think there are 4 bills right now that have been introduced in both the House and Senate. So NACo's trying to push back as much as possible early on, so we don't get to the point where there's more life that is breathed into any of these bills. But for the time being, those negotiations have stalled, just given the fact that there are the elections and the other priorities that Congress really needs to focus on.
Sure. And see the first question in the chat, always an important one, seeing if we can get the slides from today.
Absolutely, yes.
And we can certainly share those. And I think when we get the video uploaded, there should be, we could probably get a link for that, or just send out generally to the attendees here today. And then going back to on AI, I know I look at that AI Compass. I know Commissioner Weiss from Palm Beach, who worked on it with the committee, looks at that a lot. We established our Future Technology Committee this year through our current president, Terry Burrows. I know there are a lot of counties who are kind of in that development stage of building out their AI policies. Is some of the legislative, is it looking at, I guess, not necessarily preemption, but dictating how local governments can use AI? Or
Honestly, it's not so much about how local governments can use AI. It's more kind of so many months ago at this point, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, he came out with some like an AI policy roadmap. And so it's kind of following those. There are potential kind of like advisory committees that Congress is looking to create that would have representation from state and local leaders, but it wouldn't necessarily control how local governments would actually utilize AI.
that's good to hear. And I'm still, if anyone has questions for Eryn, we'll make sure we see if we can get those in. Please type in your questions now. But and on AI, just to do a quick shameless plug, we will be having our technology summit. We've been working with Rita Reynolds and Seamus from NACo on building that out. That's going to be on broadband AI and cybersecurity in January down in Marion County. But I know we'll all be staying tuned here over the next couple months here for the CR deadline in December. Are there any others? Let's see, any other questions here? And if not, Eryn, thank you so much for joining us as always and providing these updates.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. And actually, one thing that I don't think I can post to the full chat, but if I just sent you a link, if you want to throw it into all of the attendees, NACo, we're going to be hosting a webinar next week at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. So next Wednesday, the October 30th. It'll be myself, the National League of Cities, Department of Treasury, and then also FEMA. We're specifically going to be talking about the ARPA state and local fiscal recovery funds and how counties that were impacted by Hurricanes Helene and Milton can maybe reclassify funds. If you had projects that you had already obligated funds to, so like the state and local fiscal recovery fund dollars, if you have projects that you had already obligated to that were impacted by the hurricanes, how you can actually go about reclassifying those dollars and making sure that you have obligated the dollars ahead of the December 31st, 2024 deadline. So I think it'll be a great session. So just wanted to put that on your all's radar as well too.
There are a couple questions that just came in, Eryn. The first, do you anticipate the Disaster Assistance Simplification Act will pass the House? And is there any serious opposition to the bill?
So right now, I can't say so much about the House. I mean, I think that simply sometimes it's just a slower process in the House. I don't really see that there's like major opposition right now. I just think that the House hasn't necessarily gotten around to it. In terms of the opposition, there hasn't been major opposition to it either, right? Because it wouldn't technically cost a lot of money. It's simply just streamlining all of these application processes. So right now, it really doesn't seem like it's a huge issue. I think it's just a matter of timing and being able to get it on the House floor agenda. And then I see Eddie's question too. So the question is in response to regarding WIO reauthorization. There was an increase in union members serving on workforce boards and FACT's opposition to that. And if negotiations address this issue. So Eddie, right now, we know that the negotiations have addressed this issue, and that is also one of NACo's concerns as well. And you know, what I mentioned before, I think at this rate, even though we are going to continue to negotiate and really press on lawmakers during the August recess, if they're unable to reach a consensus on a larger WIO reauthorization package, you know, that's kind of a silver lining almost, because they can start a new slate in the new Congress, because there were, like this union provision, there are other provisions that we're a little bit concerned about with too. But that was definitely one of the ones that folks were concerned about in terms on Capitol Hill.
And thank you, Eddie, for that question. And Eryn, of course, I think that may conclude our questions here in the queue. Again, Eryn, thank you so much for joining us again. This is another great NACo federal update for us, and hope everyone has a great day, and we will see you again soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff, and everyone. Take